So look at that to give you some guidance, that example. To give you guidance on the first one on the a protein shot. It's the only way I survive because I don't sit down long enough to eat anything. And that one has caffeine in it to keep me going. I didn't go to bed till 3:30 this morning. So the other technique that I will teach you on Friday is the same process. It's just organized differently. So just depends on how you like to see things mainly. What we've been doing in class and what your review on the warm-up today was about multiplying two binomials together. So like if we had x plus 3 and 2x minus 5 or something like that, right? And you had to multiply them out. So we used the box method and we would write x plus 3 along the top and 2x minus 5 along the side. And then we would multiply them together. So we would multiply these two to get this box. And we would multiply these two right here to get this box. So, and we would fill in this box. And then this box would get simplified. And that would give us our answer that looked like this, the standard form. Okay. So we are now going to be doing that process backwards. Okay. There is a method to the madness. Okay. There is a reason that you have to know how to undo factoring now. Okay. So we are now, today, we're going to take the standard form. Okay. And we're going to work backwards to get the factored form. And we talked yesterday about factored form being rewriting it in a state of multiplication. So you're rewriting it. It's the exact same thing. One is just called the factored form and one is called the simplified form. Okay, the simplified form looks like this in standard form, no parentheses. Everything that's like terms have been combined and you have, it's in the simplest form possible. This form right here would be called the factored form, where that you have the parentheses and there's no powers. Okay, in the factored form for quadratics, you won't have any powers because it's not a quadratic if you still have powers once it's factored out. Okay, so that's just a recap of what we've been doing and why I included what I included on the warm-up today to get your mind thinking along those processes. I know you don't want attention, but okay. So the standard form, you need to know when I'm talking about A, I'm talking about whatever number is paired with the x squared. And if I'm talking about the B, I'm talking about whichever number is paired with the x. And C is always the constant that doesn't have a variable with it. Okay, so when I refer to the A, the B, or the C, it specifically is talking about a particular number based on what it's paired with or where it's at in the problem. Okay. The other thing that you need to note, so this top part here is just mainly all of the keys to the notes here, okay? So this F and L stand for first and last, okay? So when you're putting your boxes, when we multiplied everything out, whatever ended up in our box was always our first, in this first box was always the first term. And whatever ended up in this last box here was always the last term. The thing that messes things up are these two right here that get combined to be that middle term. So we have to figure out what the two things are that go here in order to figure out our factors. So in this example problem that we're going to walk through, the example includes, okay, it includes the x in the big X, okay? I don't. When I do my work, I don't put the X's there. You have to put the X's in the boxes, okay? But in the X itself, I usually leave my X's off because I know they're there. I just need to do my number math. Does that make sense with my X? You'll see as we go along why it doesn't matter if you include your X's or not there. So that's what this is showing you, okay? So this top part of my X, if I don't throw my pen in the trash can, the top part of my X is whatever number is here, A, times whatever number is here, C. Okay, of course it includes the sign because it always includes the sign. Okay, so A times C goes in my top box there. Whatever my B is, always goes on the bottom. In your warm-up today, you were given a number like 12 or something, and asked what two factors of 12 will add up to equal 7 or something, right? So you were asked what two things multiply together to give you 12, but then add together to give you 7. 3 and 4. So that is why I included that on there, because I needed you to be thinking in those terms to get ready for today's lesson, because that's a crucial piece of what we're doing today. We're undoing this puzzle, okay? So whatever numbers that we have here should multiply together to give me this top number, and they're going to add together to give me that bottom number. So this this example up here walks you through step by step. Okay, so this right here is what all of your work will look like. Okay, or what it will start with. It's just going to start with the one box and the one X that you're going to fill in. And when you're done, it will look like this. Okay. The example here just writes out every single step individually so you can see what the process is from one thing to the other. So right here, this is step 1. Okay, so step 1 is to multiply your first and your last term, or just the numbers. As I said, I will usually just put like 36. I won't put the x squared there. So 36 times 1 is 36. You can leave the x squared there. You can mark it out like I did. Just know that in these other examples, I won't be including the x's in the x thing. It just gets too jumbled up in there for me. Okay. And then my middle term is in the bottom. And again, I won't usually write the x there. I'll just have 15. Okay. And then I'm going to take whatever my first term is, and it's going to go in my box here. And my last term, and it goes in this last box. That's step 1. Step 1 is just filling in the blanks of the information that we know. Okay. I'm going to zoom in here in a little bit so you can see better, but if you can't see it, then you are feel free to get closer so you can see it better. So then we have step 2. So this over here is step 2. Okay? And step 2 is figuring out which two factors are going to multiply together to give me 36. So 3 times 12 equals 36, and 3 plus 12 equals 15. So I want the top to be multiplied, those two factors to multiply to give me this up here, and add to give me that bottom one. Once I know what those are, okay, and this is a typo right here. This 8 is a random 8. I have no idea where this 8 came from. So just change that box to 36. That's a random 8 that's a typo. So step 2 is figuring out what those factors were. Then we're over here at step 3. Okay. Step 3 is putting those factors that I just filled in right here into my box. Doesn't matter which one you put it in. One just needs to go in one empty box. One needs to go in the other. Okay. And then the 4th step So step 4, okay, is figuring out the greatest common factor, which is up here in this box. So we're going to try to undo everything in the box to figure out what is out here on the side. Okay. So to do that, we're going to say, okay, 12x and x squared. What's their greatest common factor? What do they have in common? The only thing they have in common is an x. So that's why I have an x there on top. Okay. Then I will do the same thing with this column. Okay. 3x and 36. Their greatest common factor is 3. So that's why there's a 3 there. And then I'll do this one. 3x and x squared. The greatest common factor there is x. And then lastly, this bottom one, 36, and 12x is 12, the greatest common factor. So now that I have all those greatest common factors pulled out, this is just my work. Okay? Now I'm going to take that information and I'm going to put it into parentheses. So it's actually in factored form. So if I were starting out with this and trying to get up here to what I started with on this problem, then I would, in my box method, I would take x plus 12 and I would write it down one side, and x plus 3 and write it on the other side. So it needs to be finished in factored form here, in parentheses. This over here is not finished. This is just the work. Okay, the finished is in the factored form with the parentheses. And then lastly, check your work. Make sure you didn't make a mistake. Make sure it checks out. Okay, you can find your mistakes and not get anything wrong if you would check your work. Okay, so I put the FOIL method. Since I use the box method to do my work, I'm going to use the FOIL method to check it. You don't have to. You can draw another box and check it with the box method if that's what you prefer. But to review the FOIL method, we take the first term times the other first term. So x times x gives me x squared. Then I'm going to take my first term and my last term, because that's my outside. Okay, and do my outside, which is x times 3, which is 3x. Then my inside terms. So 12 times x is 12x. And then my last terms, which is 12 times 3, which is 3x. My two x's can combine and gives me 15x. So I have x squared. I end up with x squared plus 15x plus 36. That's what I started with up here. So it checks out. Okay. On your homework assignment, okay, you do not have to check all of them. I've provided check box areas for you to check your work. I do, however, want you to check at least half of them on the front and half of them on the back. Just verify that you're doing them correct and didn't make any mistakes. Okay? So, example number 2. Okay? So all of that work that we just did up top is just going to be in this one X and one box here. Okay, so what am I going to put in this very top of my X right here? 16. What's going to go in the bottom? Negative 8. Okay. And as I explained before, I don't usually put my variables in the X part. You do need to put them in the boxes. So what two factors are going to multiply to give me 16 and add to give me negative 8?
4 times 4 is...
Okay. So 4 times 4 is 16, but 4 plus 4, does that give me negative 8?
No.
No.
Or negative 4 minus 4?
So, well, negative 4 times negative 4, does that give me a positive 16?
No.
A negative times a negative gives me a positive. So here's a hint that you can write here, okay? So here's a hint, okay? If this top number is positive, okay? So if the top number is positive and the bottom number is, well, if the top number is positive, these two factors are going to have the same sign. They're going to be the same sign of whatever sign is on the bottom. Okay, which means both of these have to be negative because I need a negative sum. I need them to add together to give me a negative number. So we already said they're going to be negative 4 and negative 4. Over here in my box, what am I going to put in this top box?
X2.
X squared. What am I going to put in this?
Positive 16.
Positive 16. And since I've already done the factoring step, what am I going to put in these two? Negative 4x and negative 4x. Because we use the boxes to figure out our greatest common factor, we have to include our variables because we need to include our variables in our greatest common factor. So what times what gives me x squared? There's only one answer. X times x, right? So I know that in order to get an x in this box right here, I have to have x times x right here. There's no other option for me to get x squared right there. So if I already know that, that makes this box easier and this box easier. Or not box, those blanks. Okay, I put boxes there just to indicate that that's what I'm solving for. Because now I know, if I know that this is an x here, then I know that this x times whatever is up here is going to give me negative 4x. So what does this have to be in order to get negative 4x? Negative 4. Right? And I can do the same thing this way. If I know that x times something has to give me negative 4x, what has to go in this box? Negative 4, or that blank, I should say. Okay. So when this is just x squared, when this one right here is just x squared, I automatically know 2 pieces to my puzzle, right? So that makes it easier to figure out my other blanks. Now, my final answer, okay, you can write yours next to the arrow. I just, because I've zoomed in, I can't write it over there. So my final answer is x minus 4 times x minus 4. Easier than what you thought at first? Maybe a little bit. Okay. This could also be written as x minus 4 squared. Okay. So if this is an answer choice, don't think that there's not a correct answer, because that is the same thing as this, right? Up here. Okay, so just a reminder, because those are exactly the same, it can be simplified a little bit more, considered with the squared there. Okay, so I'm going to give you about 45 seconds to just fill in example 3 and 4, what you know, just that step 1 step. Okay, just fill in the X and fill in the box of what you know. You don't have to worry about the factors just yet. So you should have this information filled out in your X's and your boxes. Okay. So here's another hint. Just like I gave you that hint about if this top number is positive, then there's a pattern. The same thing applies if it's a negative number. If it's a positive number, both of the signs have to be the same, right? So they're either both positive or both negative. So what's the other option? One positive and one negative. So if this top number here is negative, then one of these have to be positive, one of them have to be negative, in order for them to multiply together to give you a negative. Fair that? Okay. So what factors would multiply together to give you negative 20, but add together to give you 1? So we can make a list. We've got 1 and 20, but that's going to be positive. So 1 times negative 20 is going to give me what? Negative 19. Oh, well, if I add them, sorry. If I add them, it's going to be negative 19, right? Okay. If I make my 1 negative instead of my 20, is that going to fix my problem? Does that make it a positive 1? No, it makes it a positive 19. Okay. So here's the other hint. If this bottom number is positive, that means your bigger number is going to be positive. And so then we've got 2 and 10. Okay, so 10 minus 2, does that give me 1? No. Negative 4 and 5. Does that work?
Yeah. Yeah.
So positive 5 and negative 4 will add together to give me 1. So now I know over here in my boxes, I'm going to have positive 5x and negative 4x. So what's the only two things that can multiply to give me x squared? So I know that's x times x. So what does that make this have to be? Negative 4. What does that make this one have to be? Positive 5. So my two factors are x minus 4, x plus 5. Notice that when my a is 1, okay, so when a is 1, I don't really need the boxes because whatever answer I get here, whatever factors I get, are the numbers that get paired with the x in my parentheses, right? Okay, that only works when a is 1. When there's no number in front of the x squared term, I mean, there is 1 there. It's just a 1, okay? So if I use that strategy, okay, I also know that one of these is positive, one of them is negative. Okay, what's my factors going to be to give me a negative 3? To add together to give me negative 3.
Negative 6 multiply 3.
Negative 6 and positive 3.
Zachary Wickerson, will you come to the office? Zachary?
Okay, so negative 6x and plus 3x. But I just told you that these two factors are what's paired with my x's, right? So x plus 3 and x minus 6. It does not matter which order you write these in. X minus 6 times x plus 3 is still the same thing. As long as your symbols are correct. Okay? Yes, ma'am.
Where do you get the side numbers? That's what I don't understand. Where do you get your side numbers?
These two?
Yeah.
Okay. So we have to find two things that multiply to give me this number up here and add to give me this down here. So if you can't think about them, then make you a list. So we've got 1 and 18. Because this is negative, I know that means the bigger number has to be negative to add together to give me a negative number, right? So does 1 plus negative 18 give me negative 3? It doesn't. So then I've got 2 times negative 9, but they don't add together to give me negative 3. I'm getting closer. And then I've got 3 and negative 6. So this one works. That one meets the criteria. So if you can't think about it, make you a list and go down until you figure out which one it works for what you're trying to do. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So the next page. Okay. We are running way behind in here, guys. Okay. So on the next page, we're only going to do 2 examples together really quick. All of the steps are exactly the same. Okay. And it walks you through each of the steps here. Okay. The difference is that you actually have a number here for the A. okay, that gets multiplied by the 4. So here is 6 times 4, so we actually have 24 that goes there. We still have the middle term that goes in the bottom. Okay? So now we're looking for multiples or factors of 24 that multiply to give you 24, but add to give you 11. So 1 and 24, we know that they're the same sign, and they're both positive because of the rules I told you earlier, right? That's not going to work. 2 and 12, not going to work. 3 and 8 work. Okay? So 8 and 3. This is where having this box done, so 6x squared plus 4, okay? And then I'm going to use my two factors right here. So 8x plus 3x, okay? You do have to have your greatest common factors now. You can't just use x times x. There will be an x times x, but you do need to figure out what your common factor is between the numbers. So between 6 and 8, the only thing that divides both of them is 2. Okay, and then we have the same thing here. Okay, the only thing that divides 3 and 4 is 1. Then if I go this other direction, this x is not all of it because 3 and 6 can both be divided by 3. And if I go this direction, 8 and 4 can both be divided by 4. So my factors are 2x plus 1 times 3x plus 4. And this is, especially in these, when the a is not 1, okay, these ones especially you should check with FOIL or make you a new box and check them. Okay. The only other one that we need to go over is D because it has 2 asterisks by it there. Okay.
Can you just go back up a little bit?
Okay. So what do you notice about D that's different from all these other examples?
It says star star.
Well, with the actual example, with the actual numbers.
It starts off with a negative.
Starts off with a negative. Okay, so we can't have a negative a. Okay, so we have to get rid of that. I've got to go up a little bit so that are you done with it? Can you see enough of it?
Yeah.
Okay. So we're going to factor out a -1 so that we can make that a positive. So we're going to change all of my signs now because factoring out a +1 doesn't change anything except for my signs. Now this -1 is going to get to jump the line and get all the way put over here because it's still part of my factorization. It's just outside of everything that I need for my Xbox method. Okay, and all of this right here is what I'm going to use for this. I'm now going to ignore my original until I get ready to check my work. Okay. So 3 times 2 is 6, and then 5, and my factors, well, are 3 and 2 because they add together to give me 5 and multiply to give me 6. So in my box, I've got 2x squared because I'm using my new one, my new factor with the -1 factored out. Okay, plus 3. So I'm marking through that original because I've done it already several times today. I put the -3 there because I forgot to use the one that was my new one. So by drawing a line through it, it'll help you remember you're not using that to fill in your boxes. Does that make sense? So I've got 3x and 2x to fill in those. Then we've got our greatest common factors. The greatest common factor between 2 and 3 is just 1, so we've got x. This is going to be the same thing. Greatest common factor is just 1. Going this way, the greatest common factor is going to be 2x. And this way, the greatest common factor is 3. So when I write my answer, I'm going to have -1 times x plus 1 times 2x plus 3. So I'm taking this information in a parentheses and this information in a parentheses. And like I said, that -1 just jumped to the front of the line. So let me give you your assignment really quick. As I said, I won't be here tomorrow. Okay, you won't have anything new. This was it for unit 9's lessons as far as anything new. I will see you guys on Friday if I don't see you tomorrow at all. I will post those other 2 examples. I'll get them completed so you can finish your notes if you want to. And one other thing, if you're watching this online, okay, this last page of notes here is the traditional method. Okay, it's the traditional way of learning it, which is just through trial and error. And so I don't teach this method because it can take forever to do it. So it's just here for you so you can see how it can be done if you want to do it that way without the X's and the boxes. On Friday, I will teach you another method to help you out, but don't forget to complete 16 points this week for Get More Math. The Go Formative / the coloring page. Yes, you have to put it in Go Formative. And then the Xbox factoring from today. Tomorrow, you will have an assignment with the sub, and our test will be next week.